All right, hello, Packer Nation. Thanks for joining me on what will be your last flipped mini lecture of the trimester. Hope you are doing well. This is my bicycle. I like it because my wife got it for me when we decided to get married. This is my wife's sister, Kennedy. She thinks I am stupid sometimes and gives me that look. What I'm going to ask you to do is take a couple notes. And what I want you to do is I want you to go to Google Classroom. And if you click on Unit 3, that'll focus on only assignments from Unit 3. And you scroll down, I think it's November 7th is when we got this notes sheet assigned. You can see it right there, Notes Sheet Unit 3. We're going to open that sucker up and take just the last couple of notes down at the bottom of the notes sheet. The rest of this stuff you should be able to answer on your own. It's just a review guide. It's just a tool that you can use to get ready for the test. But right now at the bottom where it says Roman numeral 7, why is the Constitution so special? I want to fill those in for you because we definitely spent a lot of time talking about how flawed our government system is, how when it started out, they only invited rich white men to have the convention. That right inside the Constitution, it defends the institution or the idea of slavery. So there's lots of messed up things with our government and how it started, but there are also some things that are really helpful and really good, and we're going to take a look at those now. So on your note sheet, Roman numeral 7, a couple of things that makes our Constitution not perfect, but special, right? So the first one is the one that we've been talking about a lot recently with the ratification process. It's the Bill of Rights, okay? And hopefully by now you know that the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments. An amendment is a government word that means a change or an addition, to amend something, to change something. So the Bill of Rights are the first 10 changes to the Constitution. And the reason that they were added, should just be a review, they were added to gain the support of the anti-federalists, or people who did not believe that the Constitution was a good idea. They were called the anti-federalists. But the Bill of Rights was added to try to convince them, kind of like a Black Friday deal or a Cyber Monday deal. Hey, you might not be thinking about buying that cell phone today, but what if we give you Netflix free for a year? Or what if we give you free online subscription to something? Then will you think about buying it? And that's kind of how the ratification went. The Anti-Federalists were not planning on voting for the Constitution, but then the Federalists said, what if we throw in 10 specific rights that nobody can take from you? They are called protected rights, and they're rights the government must respect, really above the other laws, right? So here's a classic example. Here we have the First Amendment, the one that probably most people are most familiar with. Freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly means to get together, and petition means to ask for help. Freedom of religion. And the reason I put this family up here is this family follows a religion called Amish. It's a type of Christianity that tries to, as much as possible, reject technology. A lot of them are farmers, although that's not always the case anymore. But the Amish believe that education is only necessary to a certain point. They think after 8th grade that Amish children should be done with school and go start helping their families in whatever business their families happen to be doing. Now that's in direct conflict with other laws that we have in America that say that students need to stay in school until they're 16 or 18 or whatever it is, depending on the state. The Amish, because this is their religious beliefs, don't have to go to school after 8th grade. That doesn't mean that you can. That doesn't mean that you can start a religion out of nowhere. But the Supreme Court has said the First Amendment to the Constitution, giving people the freedom of religion, means that we need to give that special consideration. When the Amish, who have been around almost as long as the country, when they say they don't want to send their children to school after 8th grade because of religious reasons, the courts respect that. So that's an example of how these protected rights, these first 10 amendments, kind of have first dibs, kind of have the biggest attention. And it's one of the reasons that our Constitution is really special, because we have for a long time not always respected them, because if we look at these lists, okay, there are things that lots of groups of people in America haven't always been given the right to, but the idea is that they're the goals that our government is trying to push towards. Another thing that makes the Constitution special is another thing we've talked about, the checks and the balances. right? So this is how each branch, those three branches of government, can limit the power of the other two branches. So here we have the judicial branch, right? The Legal Justice League. So this is set up like they're superheroes, okay? We have President Trump. These two groups, if either one of these two groups became too powerful, each branch has the ability to limit the power of the other. I'm not going to give you specific examples because you should be able to say, what is the magic word that the Supreme Court can say to stop the president from doing something? What is the magic word the president can say to stop the legislative branch from doing something? So you have plenty of examples. You can look at your government cheat sheet. I'm more than happy to help you, but right now I want you to think and write one in. That's an example. Another thing that's kind of related, but I'm going to separate it a little bit, is the idea of amendments, right? Just the idea in general, that changes can be made to react to changing times. So here we have an example of two of the more famous amendments of the United States Constitution. The 19th Amendment, women have the right to vote. It took a long time, until 1919, 1920, before women had the right to vote in the United States of America. Great quote there by Susan B. Anthony, who was one of the longtime leaders of what was called the suffrage movement, trying to get women the right to vote. Another example of an amendment was an amendment that we had in the United States for a while that banned alcohol. Here they are, these bar owners are pouring out the beer into the sewer because for a while in the United States there was an amendment that says that you cannot buy, sell, or use alcohol. And that was an amendment. And then there was another amendment a little bit later on that undid that amendment. So the idea that there's this real flexibility to our Constitution, that we can change things. If they don't work, we can change them again. That gives the power of the Constitution to change over time and still be with us. And then finally, this one's a little controversial, and I'll try to explain to you why. But what we have in the Constitution is what I call flexible wording. Right? So some sections, when they sat down to write this, on purpose, the founders or the framers or Alexander Hamilton and James Madison and those guys, some sections are purposefully unclear. On purpose, they didn't get into specifics. And that allows the document to change over time as judges look at the Constitution and decide what is fair. One example is this term in the Bill of Rights that says, citizens should not be exposed to cruel and unusual punishment. Well, what does that mean? Some of you might think that taking away your cell phone for an hour is cruel and unusual punishment, right? But they wouldn't have even understood what that meant back when they wrote the Constitution. When they wrote the Constitution, if you were punished by the government for doing something particularly awful, some sort of egregious error, usually murder or something awful, you could be killed by being hung to death. Today we think that's pretty creepy, that's not a good thing. A lot of people don't think the government should be ending someone's life as a punishment. Other people think that's fine, but they'd rather see it done with an injection, a set of medicines that make someone's life end. But back then it was totally normal to, if someone broke a certain law and they were going to be punished, they would be taken out into the middle of town and just hung for everyone to watch. Some people disagree on how much we should believe this flexible wording idea. Everybody believes that cruel and unusual punishment might change over time, but there's a group of people called the originalists that think that we should make decisions based purely on what the guys that wrote the Constitution in the 1700s wanted or meant. It's a big challenge, but a lot of people think it's possible. Another example of privacy, again, we've talked about in class, cell phone privacy. The Constitution doesn't say anything that you have the right to your cell phone photos and people can't take them. But we've taken it to mean, the Fourth Amendment, we've taken it to mean the fact that you do have the right to some digital privacy. So these are examples of why the Constitution, I think, is special. It's not perfect. It's set up a government that's been unfair many times, but it also has done some really powerful, cool things. And it's this idea that, one, we have this Bill of Rights that we treat as really special, that protects our rights. We have the checks and balances system, so no branch can be particularly powerful. We have the ability to change it over time with amendments, and this flexible wording where parts of the Constitution we can change because they're not real specific. That is what I need you to know about why I think the Constitution is special.